"Hey, you really don't need to come to this one," Sarah told me, flashing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. That was 3 days before the company party. If I'd understood what she was really saying, maybe I could have spared myself from what was about to unfold. "I'm James Wilson, by the way. I'm 46, and I've made a good living as an account manager at a major manufacturing company. I've been married to Sarah for a quarter of a century. She's been my best friend since we were kids in the 4th grade, and we started dating back in high school. Together, we built a life that most folks would call the American dream, a spacious house on Lake Arlington, a daughter we absolutely adore, and the kind of financial security people envy." Let me back up a bit. Sarah, her full name's Sarah Habath, has a career in graphic design at a top-tier ad agency. Even after all these years, she still turns heads wherever she goes. She's got this classic beauty, blonde hair, piercing blue eyes, and a figure that just doesn't seem to age. She's always been the type who walks into a room and instantly draws attention. And honestly, I was always proud to be the guy by her side. At least, I used to think she was truly mine. We both grew up on the same block in Fort Worth, Texas. By the time senior prom rolled around, we were basically glued at the hip. We went off to the University of Texas together, squeezed into a tiny one-bedroom apartment, and somehow made it work, even though we were broke college kids. Those were the days, felt like nothing could touch us. We used to laugh about how we already knew how to live together before we ever tied the knot. Not long after graduation, we got married, and a few years later, our daughter Emma came along. Emma's our only kid. She's 21 now, studying at the University of Oklahoma. She's engaged to Michael, a good guy from a well-off family. He treats her like she's the best thing in the world, and honestly, we couldn't have hoped for a better match. From the outside, our life looked just about perfect. Money was never an issue. Sarah pulls in a 6-figure salary at her agency, and I make over $500,000 a year managing accounts. About 15 years back, we bought a foreclosed house near the lake for $350,000 in cash, fixed it up ourselves, and turned it into something special. Now, it's worth more than $2 million. With that and our retirement savings, we were in a really good place. That sense of security made what happened next even harder to see coming. For years, Sarah and I had our routines. We'd have breakfast together every morning, catch up about our days in the evenings, and squeeze in date nights whenever we could. It all felt solid. She'd fill me in on her work, her coworkers, and the projects she was juggling, and I'd share my own stories from the world of big accounts. Nothing flashy, but it worked for us. Or so I believed. Thinking back, there were little signs, moments when she seemed distant or just too tired to talk. I brushed it off, though. I trusted her completely. After 25 years of marriage and a lifetime of shared memories, she wasn't just my wife, she was my partner, my teammate. So when she casually mentioned the company party and told me I didn't have to come, I didn't read too much into it. But then she brought it up again. And again. Each time, her words were gentle, but the message was unmistakable: "James, you really don't need to go." Something felt off, and for the first time in a long while, I noticed it. That was the beginning. That invitation, or rather, the suggestion to skip it, that was the spark that set everything in motion. I didn't realize it at the time, but my whole world was about to be turned upside down. When Saturday night rolled around, I made up my mind, I was going to that party. Sarah looked incredible, even more so than usual. She wore this sleek black dress that fit her perfectly, her blonde hair falling over her shoulders, and her blue eyes seemed to shine even brighter. She always knew how to make an entrance, but tonight, it felt like she was putting on a performance. When we pulled up to the venue, the first thing that hit me was just how many people seemed to know Sarah. Now, she's always been the outgoing one between the two of us, she can work a room like nobody's business, but tonight, there was something different in the air. Folks weren't just being friendly, their smiles hung around a little too long, and the looks they gave her felt heavy, like there was some inside joke I wasn't in on. And then I noticed him. Before I even had a chance to ask Sarah where she wanted to start, this guy, probably early 50s, gray hair but still in good shape, strode right up to her like he owned the place. The way he carried himself made me uneasy. Sarah greeted him with a warm smile and reached out to shake his hand, but it wasn't just a regular handshake. There was something personal about it, like they shared a secret. She turned to me, quick as a flash, kissed me on the cheek, and introduced him as Ryan Davis, one of her advertising sales reps. Ryan. That name stuck in my head like a thorn. I tried to play it cool, but there was something about the guy that just rubbed me the wrong way. His grin was too smooth, his laugh sounded like he'd practiced it in the mirror, and the way he looked at Sarah, well, it sure as hell wasn't the way a coworker should look at someone. We spent the next hour making small talk and sipping drinks, but I stayed away from the booze. I told Sarah I'd be the designated driver, but honestly, I just needed to keep my wits about me. I started noticing every little thing, how often Sarah's eyes drifted over to Ryan, how close they stood when they chatted, the way his hand would linger on her arm just a little too long. Things really took a turn when we hit the dance floor. Sarah and I have always loved to dance together, but that night, she seemed somewhere else. Every time I spun her around, her eyes kept darting across the room. I followed her gaze, and sure enough, there was Ryan, standing at the edge of the dance floor, watching us with this smug look on his face. It was like he was daring me to do something about it. The real breaking point came when we sat down to catch our breath. Ryan walked right up to our table, barely even acknowledging me, and asked Sarah if she wanted to dance. The nerve of that guy just about made my blood boil. Sarah must have picked up on how close I was to losing it, because she gave him a sweet smile and said, "All my dances are reserved for my husband." For a split second, I felt a wave of relief, but the flash of anger in Ryan's eyes told me this wasn't over. A little later, Sarah headed over to the bar to grab another drink. I kept my eyes on her, my nerves shot. That's when I saw Ryan make his move again. This time, their conversation was quieter, more intense. Sarah looked at him with this pleading look, her lips moving just enough for me to catch the words. She said, "I'm sorry, darling." That was it. I just stood there, frozen, every alarm bell in my head going off at once. Darling. Who the hell was this guy to her? The rest of the night, I couldn't stop watching them, every glance, every whisper, every little touch. It was obvious something was going on, and it felt like everyone in that room knew it except me. People kept glancing my way, their eyes full of pity, like I was the punchline to some cruel joke. When we finally got home, I couldn't hold it in any longer. I turned to Sarah in the car and asked, "What's really going on between you and Ryan?" I tried to keep my voice steady, but inside I was shaking. She brushed it off, told me I was being paranoid, said Ryan was just a coworker. But the way she said it was too smooth, too rehearsed. I wanted to believe her, God, I wanted to believe her, but that night, as she lay next to me in bed pretending to sleep, I knew deep down that I needed answers. And I wasn't about to let this go until I got them. The days after the party were rough. Sarah acted like nothing had happened, like I'd just imagined the whole thing. She smiled, laughed at my jokes, even went out of her way to cook my favorite meals. But I couldn't get those images out of my head, the looks, the whispers, the way she'd called him, darling. It was eating me up inside that I realized I couldn't just rely on what Sarah told me. Words can be twisted, brushed aside, or flat out denied. I needed something solid, something that couldn't be explained away. So, I did what I figured any guy in my shoes might do, I hired a private investigator. The guy's name was Mark Sullivan, and he came highly recommended as someone who didn't mess around. I laid everything out for him, told him exactly what I suspected, and asked him to dig up the truth about Sarah and Ryan. Mark didn't waste any time. Within a week, he started sending me updates. The first batch of photos hit me like a gut punch. There was Sarah, my wife, walking into a motel with Ryan. They looked relaxed, at ease with each other, like this was just another day for them. Another shot showed them kissing in the parking lot, completely lost in each other, not a care in the world. I told myself to hold off on confronting her until Mark had the whole story. I needed all the facts, not just a few snapshots. Over the next few weeks, the evidence kept piling up, more photos, some video, even audio recordings. It was worse than anything I'd imagined. This wasn't just a couple of stolen moments during lunch breaks, it was a full-on affair. There were recordings of Sarah joking about their office wife setup, laughing about how easy it was to keep it under wraps. The part that hurt the most was hearing her talk about me. In one clip, she said, "Albert would never suspect a thing. He's too busy with work to notice." That stung more than anything. She'd written me off as some clueless idiot. When Mark finally handed me the full report, I just sat in my car outside his office for what felt like forever. I flipped through the pages, staring at the photos, reading the transcripts. The weight of it all just pressed down on me. This wasn't some one-time mistake or a moment of weakness. Sarah had been living a double life, and the worst part was, everyone around her seemed to know, everyone except me. That night, I came home and acted like nothing was wrong. Sarah greeted me with her usual smile, asked about my day, and went about her routine like she didn't have a care in the world. I watched her closely, every little move, every word. It was almost maddening how good she was at pretending. The next morning, I decided it was time to lay it all out. Over breakfast, I set the envelope with all the evidence right on the table. "Sarah," I said, keeping my voice as steady as I could, "you'd never betray me, right?" She froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. "Of course not," she shot back, sounding defensive. "Why would you even ask something like that?" I didn't say a word. I just pulled out the first photo and slid it across the table to her. She stared at it, and I watched the color drain from her face. Then I laid down another photo, and another. With each one, her expression changed, from shock, to fear, to outright panic. "Albert, this isn't what it looks like," she stammered, her voice shaking. "I don't love him. It's just physical. It doesn't mean anything." I leaned in, my voice cold and flat. "It means everything to me." After that, the excuses started pouring out, how it was just a fling, how she never stopped loving me, how she thought I'd never find out. But none of it mattered anymore. I had the truth right in front of me, and there was no way to go back. Sitting there at the table with the woman I'd loved for 25 years, I felt something inside me break. The trust was gone, shattered into pieces I knew I'd never be able to put back together. As if learning about Sarah's affair wasn't enough, what happened after that cut even deeper. After our showdown at breakfast, the house was thick with tension. Sarah kept trying to apologize, trying to explain herself, but every word out of her mouth just made me angrier. She kept saying it was a mistake, that it didn't mean anything. A year-long affair, and she wanted me to believe it was meaningless. I needed to clear my head, so I threw myself into work for a few days, just to get some distance from everything at home. I figured if I kept busy, maybe I could keep my mind off the mess my life had become. But then my phone rang, and I saw Emma's name pop up. My daughter has always been the light of my life, the one person who could make me smile no matter what. I thought maybe talking to her would be the break I needed. "Hey, sweetheart," I answered, trying my best to sound like everything was normal. But the second she started talking, I could tell something was off. "Daddy," she said, her voice shaky, "I just got off the phone with Mom. She's really upset. She told me you kicked her out of the house." "What's going on?" My heart just dropped. I hadn't actually kicked Sarah out, at least, not yet, but it was obvious she was already spinning the story to make herself look like the victim. I took a deep breath and told Emma the truth. I laid it all out, Sarah's affair, Ryan, how it had been going on for over a year. Emma's response floored me. "Dad, it's not a big deal." I thought maybe I'd misheard her. "Not a big deal?" I repeated, my voice rising. Emma, your mother lied to me for a year. She cheated on me. She let out this sigh, like I was the one being unreasonable. Dad, it's the 21st century. People have affairs. It happens. Men do it all the time, and nobody makes a big deal about it. I never did that to your mother, I shot back, my anger boiling over. Not once. I never betrayed her. Her tone changed then, suddenly she was defensive, almost talking down to me. Well, maybe you should have. Maybe then you wouldn't be so upset about this. Dad, you need to let it go and let Mom come home. She's your wife, and she loves you. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own daughter was taking her mother's side, acting like I was the bad guy for being hurt. It felt like a second betrayal, layered right on top of the first. But it didn't stop there. Oh, and by the way, Emma said, almost like it was an afterthought, I know Ryan. He's a great guy. Mom and I were talking, and we think he should come to the wedding. I couldn't help it, my voice came out louder than I meant. What? He's important to Mom, Emma said, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. And honestly, I like him too. If Mom wants him there, he should be part of the day. Maybe he could even walk her down the aisle with you. That was it for me. I was done. If Ryan is at your wedding, Emma, I said, my voice cold and steady, then I won't be there. There was a long pause on the other end. Then she said, Dad, you're being ridiculous. No, I said, not backing down. If you want Ryan there, let him play father of the bride, because I won't. I hung up before she could say anything else. My hands were shaking, and my chest felt like it was in a vice. I'd always been there for Emma, always had her back, and now she was tossing me aside to defend her mother and some guy she barely even knew. That night, Sarah tried to talk to me again. She came into the bedroom, tears streaming down her face, begging me to give us another chance. But then she had the nerve to say, I want us to fix this, Albert, but I also want to keep seeing Ryan. You need to accept that. I just stared at her, feeling completely numb. Sarah, I said quietly, you need to leave. She didn't go, not right away, anyway, but in that moment, something inside me just snapped. My wife, my daughter, they weren't the people I thought they were. And for the first time in my life, I realized I was truly on my own. By the time Sarah told me she wanted to work things out but still keep Ryan in her life, something inside me flipped. That was the moment I knew I was finished, not just with her, but with the whole life we'd built together. Our marriage, our home, the routines, even the dreams, they all felt like a lie now. But I wasn't about to just walk away empty-handed. If Sarah and Ryan thought they could humiliate me and move on without consequences, they were about to find out they'd picked the wrong guy that I started making moves behind the scenes. All those years handling big accounts had taught me how to think a few steps ahead, and this situation wasn't any different. My first priority was locking down my finances. Sarah might have been a whiz with design, but when it came to our money, she left all that to me. She never bothered to learn how our investments were set up or how much cash we actually had on hand. That gave me a real advantage. So, step 1, I started shifting everything I could. I moved a big chunk of our savings into an offshore account, set up under a name she'd never be able to connect to me. Then I took out a hefty loan against our house. Sarah always loved to tell her friends we owned the place outright, but that was never really true. Sure, we'd paid off the original mortgage, but I'd refinanced a few times for investment opportunities. She never asked questions, just assumed we were set. Once the loan came through, I also borrowed against her BMW. That car was worth about 45 grand, and I managed to get 40 out of it. Every penny went straight into accounts she'd never see. And the best part? All that new debt was in her name. I kept this operation quiet, working on it bit by bit over a few weeks. Every spare moment, I was fine-tuning my plan. Meanwhile, I acted like I was moving on from the whole mess. I told Sarah we could try to work things out. She seemed relieved, hell, she even looked a little smug, like she'd won. She had no idea that every night she spent at Ryan's motel was just giving me more time to set everything up. At work, things were falling into place, too. The company was going through a merger, and they offered me a buyout package worth over $500,000. I didn't hesitate for a second. I took the deal and had the money wired straight to my offshore account. Next up was the wedding. Emma's big dream wedding. That was over. I called the planner myself, told her I wouldn't be paying for a thing, and suggested Emma ask her office dad for help instead. The planner was shocked, but I didn't care. If Emma wanted to take her mother's side and cozy up to Ryan, she could deal with the consequences. The last piece was getting Sarah to sign off on some paperwork without realizing what she was doing. I put together some fake life insurance documents and told her they were part of a new company benefit. One night, after she'd had a couple glasses of wine, I handed her the papers and said we needed to get them notarized. She was tipsy enough not to read a single word, just signed where I told her. That signature was the final nail in the coffin. All in all, it took about 2 months to pull everything together. By the end, I was ready to vanish. The house, the car, the mountain of debt, that was all Sarah's problem now. The bank would come calling soon enough, but by then, I'd be long gone. The hardest part was keeping up the act. Every morning, I'd sit across from Sarah at breakfast, listening to her talk about our future, about her plans for us. Every word just reminded me how far she drifted from the woman I used to know. But I kept my cool, nodding and smiling, quietly counting down the days. On my last day, I turned in my company badge, packed a single bag, and walked out the door without looking back. By the time Sarah figured out what had happened, I'd be nothing but a memory. She thought she'd outsmarted me, but she never realized I'd been 5 steps ahead the whole time. Walking away felt like finally stepping outside after being trapped in a burning building. I could breathe again. I was free. But I knew the real storm was just getting started for Sarah, and for everyone else who thought they could treat me like a fool. The first sign that my plan was working showed up about a week after I disappeared. The loan against the house went through, and the bank wasted no time getting in touch with Sarah. She was completely blindsided. For years, she'd been living in this fantasy that the house was paid off, that we were set for life. Now, suddenly, she was staring down a $2 million debt, and she had no clue how to handle it. The BMW? Same story. The bills started rolling in, and without my paycheck coming in, Sarah just couldn't keep up. I'm sure she turned to Ryan for help, but from what I heard, he was dealing with his own mess. His wife found out about the affair, thanks to a little nudge from me, and she didn't waste any time. She filed for divorce, took the house, most of their assets, and even managed to get him fired from the agency. Turns out, she was a major shareholder and knew exactly which strings to pull. Ryan went from being the big man at work to driving some old, beat-up car for a rideshare company. Emma's dream life didn't exactly pan out either. After I cut off the wedding funds, I called Michael, her fiancé, and laid everything out for him. I even sent him the recordings of Emma brushing off the affair like it was nothing. Michael was heartbroken. He called off the engagement and walked away, leaving Emma to pick up the pieces. With no wealthy fiancé to lean on and a dad who wasn't about to bail her out, Emma ended up moving in with Sarah. The two of them landed in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment in a rough part of town. From what I've heard, the place is barely livable, but it's all they could afford after Sarah lost the house and the car. I could have stopped there, but I wanted to make sure Sarah really understood just how deep her mistakes ran. I left copies of all the evidence with Ryan's wife and with Sarah's boss. Her reputation at work took a nosedive, and it wasn't long before she was let go. Last I heard, she was waiting tables at some roadside diner, a far cry from her old life. As for me, I started over in Florida. I wanted a fresh start, somewhere warm, somewhere nobody knew my name. I bought myself a truck and a travel trailer, paid for both in cash and registered them under my cousin's name just to keep things simple. My money was safe in offshore accounts, and I landed a solid job with one of the big companies down here. Every now and then, I hear little updates about Sarah and Emma. They're struggling, no question about it. And Ryan? He's just as miserable as the rest of them. But honestly, I don't feel bad for any of them. They made their choices, and now they're living with the fallout. My life now? It's better than I ever thought it could be. I wake up every morning with a clear head, no more lies, no more drama. The sun's always shining, and the future feels wide open. Sure, I lost a marriage and a family, but I gained something way more important, my freedom.